Welcome to Hard Talk with me, Zeinab Badawi. The National Assembly in Pakistan has been dissolved ahead of the general election in late July. Well, just as eyes were turned on him when he was a top international cricket star, much attention is focused on Imran Khan, who abandoned sport for the far less gentlemanly arena of Pakistani politics. He established his own party, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the PTI, or Movement for Justice Party, more than 20 years ago. He says he wants to create a new Pakistan. In the last elections in 2013, his party came third. So, can he make it to the position of Prime Minister this time round? And is he the right person to steer Pakistan, given criticisms about his performance? Imran Khan in Islamabad, welcome to Hard Talk. What makes you believe you have the expertise and experience to run a country as complex, populous and diverse as Pakistan?
Then the issue with Pakistan is the same issue with most of the developing world. It's a question of governance. So if Pakistan is a governance failure, the reason why we haven't achieved our potential is because we have weak state institutions. And because we have weak state institutions, we cannot collect enough revenues to develop our human beings. So in a nutshell, these are the two issues. To develop our state institutions and then to raise the money to spend on our human beings, on our education, on our health, on our clean drinking water, etc. So
but why are you the right person to bring about these changes that I think everybody would agree Pakistan needs?
Well, mainly because the two other parties which have been taking powers in the past 30 years, who've been taking turns in getting to power, they failed. And during their time, the state institutions have degenerated. There was a case in the Supreme Court with the former Prime Minister, and the Chief Justice in the Supreme Court said that all state institutions have collapsed in Pakistan. So this has happened during the time these two parties have been in power.
You're talking, can I just say that you're talking about the PPP, the Pakistan People's Party, the party led by the Bilawal Bhutto, the Bhutto family, and also the ruling party, the Pakistan Muslim League N, and you're referring to Nawaz Sharif, the former Prime Minister. But look, they may have been discredited in your eyes, but nevertheless, in order for you to do better than these two parties in the election, a March National Gallup poll puts your party, the PTI, at 24% and the ruling PMLN at 36%. So you've got a huge mountain to climb to do better.
Then these surveys are quite misleading. I mean, if you look at the election which David Cameron contested in England, they were supposed to be level with the Labour Party, and there was a landslide victory. So this is a spot, this is what might have been the survey at the time. But when the election time comes and when parties come up with their manifestos and when the electorate has to make up its mind, that's really when the swing takes place. And we believe that this is the time that my party, Tehreek-e-Insaf, I feel that this is the time PTI is going to win the election in a landslide.
But really, I mean, I have to put it to you, you say, oh, well, you can always dismiss polls, but for example, let's take the state of Punjab, the biggest in Pakistan. You can't really win a national election unless you carry Punjab with you. It has around 100 million people living there, about half the population of Pakistan. It's held by the ruling PMLN. In February, your party lost badly by a considerable margin in a by-election. Only in February. It does not bode well for you, Imran Khan.
Then, in by-elections in Pakistan, if you look at our history, always the party in power wins the by-elections. when PMLN was in the opposition between 2002 and 2007, they lost all the by-elections to PMLQ but won the general election. And same with the People's Party. When that was in power between 2008 and 2013, they won most of the by-elections. So by-election is not a good indicator, but it is the rising popularity of a party as you get close to the elections, which party is on the ascendant. And I think if you look at the polls, if you go back a year ago, PTI was much further down, and now it is going up. And if you take a poll right now, it's probably level with the PMLN.
All right. Listen, you've positioned yourself very much as an outsider, launching a war against a system that you say is corrupt and unjust. You say, I want to create a new Pakistan. But what is new and different about your policies? Because they sound quite similar to some of the things that the other parties are saying. You know, food, shelter and clothing is the slogan for the PPP. You say something similar. So what's new and different about you?
Well, the policies of the two main parties have enriched the rich and impoverished the poor. So the gap between the rich and poor in the last 30 years has increased. At the moment, we have a tiny rich island of rich people, and we have a sea of poor people. The difference is getting bigger because of the policies. So how are we going to be different? I again repeat that we are the only party that can build state institutions. For instance, the most difficult institution to build is the police. Now in KP, in the province, Pakhtunkhwa is the province which our party has been in power for 5 years, every survey says that the best police is right now in KP. Reason being that we have made it, we have isolated it from political pressure, brought in merit, and as a result, the professionalism of the police has gone up, and the police that was most hit by the Taliban in 2013, almost 1,000 police had been killed by the Taliban, and it was devastated. Today, it is the best police force. But crime has come down, terrorism has come down. So I'm just saying that parties that destroy institutions, history tells us they can never build the same institutions again.
You bring up your record in the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, KP for short, which your party, the PTI, has held for the last 5 years. Let me tell you what Khurshid Shah, an opposition member in the National Assembly, has said about your record there. PTI chief Imran Khan had a chance to implement his agenda during their rule in KP, but he missed a big chance. Khan talks about creating 10 million jobs in the province, but he's not even been able to create 5,000 jobs during his tenure. Fair point?
One indication. KP is one province out of all the provinces, 4 provinces in Pakistan. They never re-elect a party. They only give you one chance. So MMA got one chance in 2002, was wiped out in 2008. But this is you of the jobs.
You know, you're talking about your agenda. You had a chance to demonstrate that you could deliver, and you haven't. That's the point.
Zain, this is what I'm coming to that. Now, ANP got a chance in 2008, got wiped out in 2013. So today, PTI, all surveys in KP, I mean, I'm saying don't listen to what Khurshid Shah says. He has to say those things. But the indication is,
how many jobs have you
surveys,
created? But how many jobs have you created? And I want to ask you also, have you built a new university in KP? Have you built a new hospital in KP?
So, first of all, if you look at all surveys today, PTI has doubled its vote bank. So clearly what PTI manifesto, it must have fulfilled its promises in the manifestos. Otherwise, the people would not be saying that they will again vote for PTI. So that's number one indicator, rather than what the opposition is saying. In all the main fields, human development, education, KP is ahead of all the provinces. In health, recent survey, Herald survey, KP is ahead of other provinces. In local government, it has the best local government system. Law and order, police, it is the number one. Environment, it has, first time in the history of Pakistan, a province has done so much for the environment, has planted 1 billion trees in 5 years.
But have you built a new university, a new hospital in KP? Have you delivered the jobs that you said you were going to deliver?
Poverty in KP has been halved. Remember now, first of all, Zain, you must understand, KP was the province most hard hit by the war on terror.
Sure.
It was devastated. 70% of industry was closed. I'll just give an indication so people know what we were up against. In 2013, in all the three provinces, the bigger provinces, the total number of major terrorist attacks were 99, all put together. In just KP and Fata, adjoining Fata, there were 200 terrorist attacks. KP was devastated. 70% of industry was closed. So people were sheltering in Islamabad.
You've talked about... I'm sorry to interrupt you. You've talked about the security situation. I was trying to ask you about your social policy record there. Look, you've talked a lot now about poverty and inequality, and I have to put it to you, Imran Khan, that you yourself may say things on the campaign trail like this: a civilized society is not known by how many big houses are constructed, but how people in the slums live. Yet you live in a beautiful villa in the hills overlooking Islamabad, which is worth some several million US dollars. And that kind of jars with your message, doesn't it?
Look, Zain, in whatever house I live, if it's my legitimate earning, my tax-paid earning, if I live the way I like, that's my business. It doesn't mean that, you know, I cannot have compassion for the people. I mean, remember, I am the biggest. I do the greatest amount of charity work in Pakistan's history. Built one cancer hospital, the biggest charitable institution. Built a second cancer hospital. Remember, 75% of the patients which come to the hospital are treated free, cancer patients.
But you don't find it a bit embarrassing?
Then the second hospital in Peshawar.
Okay.
Then a third one
we know that you've done
Karachi.
Yeah, but
then
do
a
you
university.
not find it embarrassing that you live in a multi-million-dollar villa and yet you preach about people living in slums?
This house was built by me selling my London flat, which I earned during my cricketing days. I sold that and built this house. It's no more expensive than that one flat I had in Kensington.
All right.
So I sold that and built this house.
Okay.
And this, by the way, was proven in the Supreme Court. I don't know whether you know that I was in the Supreme Court justifying where I got the money for this house because the Prime Minister was being investigated.
All right, let's move on from your personal accommodation and the messages it sends to... you were talking about security and...
no, but then hold on a minute.
Yes.
Look, I mean, this, I again repeat, this, the amount I bought this place for was that one London flat which I sold.
Okay, you made that clear, Imran Khan. Okay, so talking about security and the armed forces and so on, one criticism that you often hear made about you, one person, for example, Maryam Nawaz, the daughter of the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, says you are a stooge and pawn of the Pakistani army. Are you?
That's rich coming from Maryam Nawaz. Her father was literally manufactured by General Zia's military dictatorship.
But what do you say about the criticism? Because I have to put it to you that he, of course, was removed from power in 1999 by General Pervez Musharraf, and you welcomed his ouster, because obviously you've waged a long campaign against him. And in 2000, you said you would even accept an offer from General Pervez Musharraf to join a government.
This is not true. I could have joined General Pervez Musharraf's government in 2001. I had the offer.
Yeah.
In fact, I was the only party who had the offer who did not join him. And in fact, same General Pervez Musharraf put me in jail. I was the only political leader put in jail by General Pervez Musharraf.
But should you... All right, you're putting the record straight on that. But again, perhaps you could be a bit more critical of the armed forces. That's another thing that's said about you. And speak more about its excesses. There is concern from human rights organisations like Amnesty International. 2017-18, it says reports continue that security forces were involved in human rights violations, including torture and other ill treatment, arbitrary detention, extrajudicial executions and enforced disappearances. Shouldn't you be highlighting these kind of very serious concerns rather than just saying, oh, we've built up the security forces in KP and so on and so forth?
Zain, sure. But first, let me just clear this. You said that Maryam Nawaz says I'm backed by the military. There's a 22-year struggle behind me. Her father was no one, picked up by the military and made a chief minister and a prime minister. I have struggled for 22 years. And if anyone tells you about, on 29th of April, we had the biggest rally in Pakistan's history. 500,000 people turned up. When you have people with you, you don't need any crutches. Someone like Nawaz Sharif, he was picked up by the army. He did not have any following.
This is about your record.
So number one, I want to make that clear.
All right.
Secondly, talking about the army. Look, the army depends upon the army chief. So General Zia's army would be different. General Musharraf's army would be different. General Bajwa, who's the current head of the military, his army is different. So I criticized General Musharraf's army because I was against Pakistan sending its troops into the tribal areas.
All right, but you get on with General Bajwa.
Because the moment you send your army...
Okay, you get on with General Bajwa, the current chief of the armed forces. All right, you've made that clear, then, your position on the army. I also want to put another thing that he said about you.
But I'll tell you, Zain, why I'm with General...
You've made it clear where you stand.
But I need to tell you why General Bajwa.
Yeah, no,
why
that's fine.
You've
made it clear. I was not bringing any criticisms in about General Bajwa or anything like that, just asking you to speak out more about some of the rotten apples in the armed forces and the actions that they carry, according to human rights organisations. Another thing that he said about you...
But can I clear this then?
Well, just very quickly,
Look, I oppose the army being sent to the tribal areas. Why? Because whenever you send army into civilian areas, there will always be human rights violations. How can there not be? The army is not fighting another army. It's in their villages there. There are people, human beings living there. So I oppose the war. What General Bajwa, the reason I think that he's the first army general, army chief, he has categorically stated he stands with Pakistan's democracy. He stands with Pakistan's constitution. And he is trying to clear up the mess created by General Musharraf when he sent the army into the tribal areas.
All right, thank you for clarifying that. All right, I want to put to you another thing that he said about you. Bilal Bhutto, for instance, the co-leader of the opposition PPP party, says that you are the estranged brother of the Taliban. Do you admire the Taliban in any shape or form, the Pakistani Taliban?
Because, look, Bilal can be excused. He doesn't know what is happening in Pakistan. He's just been parachuted into Pakistan's politics. He doesn't know what's going on the ground. I oppose Pakistan army going into the tribal areas. I did not agree with that. And because of that, I was called pro-Taliban. So it was the George Bush thing. Either you're with us or against us. So if you're anti the war on terror, that means you're pro-terrorist.
The tribal areas.
So this is as naive and silly as that.
All right, but where do you stand on the Taliban, Imran Khan? Because in June 2002, you addressed a workers' convention in Pakistan and said you were very much inspired by the Taliban system of justice and that I will establish the same system in the country after assuming power.
Let me explain to you what the Taliban system of justice was. It was what is in the Pashtun tribal areas, what the system of justice is. And what is it? They have a jury. Every village has a jury. They listen to the cases. People get free justice. Poor people have access to justice there. For instance, forget the Taliban. In tribal areas of Pakistan, they have been the most peaceful areas until this war on terror. Reason being, people have access to justice. There's a jury. Every village has a jury. It sits down, it listens to two people, and it dispenses justice. And they were crime-free areas. So
but have you changed your mind? Have you changed your mind now, Imran Khan? You said that in 2002, because this is the Pakistan Taliban, the same one who, in 2014, carried out the attack on the school in Peshawar. 145 people killed, nearly all of them children. We know Malala Yousafzai, obviously the Nobel Peace Laureate, also attempted murder by the Pakistan Taliban. This is a group that asked you if you could represent them in talks. You declined and said, no, find your own representatives. But I put it to you, it sounds as though they like you.
Zain, for one, in 2002, there were no Pakistani Taliban. So when I talked about it, it was the Afghan Taliban, and one thing they did was that they brought to a war-torn, destroyed Afghanistan by the warlords. If you read a book by Living with the Taliban by Mullah Zaif, he'll tell you they brought justice by bringing in what was the Pashtun system of justice, which is a jury system. They brought peace. So, there were no Pakistani Taliban in 2002.
All right.
The Pakistani Taliban came out in 2006. So let's get the record straight.
Can you talk to them now?
And the justice, I'll just complete this.
Sure.
In Pakhtunkhwa today, in KP today, in police stations, district police stations, we have that justice. We have a jury, and people have free access to justice in district. It's very popular because poor people cannot afford lawyers. And
do you talk to the Taliban, the Pakistan Taliban now? Do you think you should do business with them?
The situation has changed completely. After the Waziristan operation, the Taliban have been pushed into Afghanistan. So there are actually hardly any militant Taliban left in Pakistan. Actually, we have more danger from ISIS, because ISIS has is on the borders of Pakistan's tribal areas in Afghanistan. So now there is more danger in the future from ISIS.
All right. Talking about the terror threats, I just want to touch on America, because there's been concern about some of the anti-American sentiment coming from your party. I give you just one example. Shireen Mazari led a chant recently in Lahore proclaiming anyone who is a friend of the US is a traitor. This is a country, after all, that's given Pakistan over the last 60 years about $67 billion. Admittedly, most of it in military aid, and yet it's been a very generous donor. So what is your position? Just set the record straight. Are you anti-American?
Well, first of all, Shireen Mazari has her views. They are always within a political party. There are views ranging from one side to the other. So, you know, every party has that. But let me make it clear. Pakistan has to be friends with America. United States is a superpower. But where most of us felt deeply hurt is when Donald Trump blamed Pakistan for the failure of the United States in Afghanistan. We felt that here was a country being made a scapegoat, a country that had 70,000 people killed fighting the US war. We had over $100 billion lost to the economy because General Musharraf took us into a war which was not our war. I opposed it. And at the end, the humiliation. I mean, to be made scapegoats for their failure in Afghanistan.
So are you anti-American?
Which was one of the...
Are you anti-American now?
If I criticize policies of Pakistani government, am I anti-Pakistan?
All right, so you're not anti-American.
How naive is it that if you criticize a policy of the US, you are dubbed as anti-American?
All right, so you're saying you're anti-American.
Again, that George Bush either with us or against us.
All right. Finally and briefly, Imran Khan, I put it to you that your personal life over the years has attracted a lot of attention. You know, your 3 marriages, you've just had your 3rd marriage, you were married to a British heiress, Jemima Khan, a short-lived marriage to a very glamorous TV presenter. Do you feel that that kind of slightly taints your image as a pious Muslim amongst your followers?
Look, our private lives... You know, there are a lot of influences on our lives, a lot of things happening in our personal lives, which result in as has been the situation with me. This is my 3rd marriage. I do not think that has anything to do with the public.
Imran Khan in Islamabad, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hard Talk.